hurricanes and tornadoes and all that nasty stuff.
To hear it from
Sure.
you, how do we say how temperate zones came about, the tropics and the Arctic zones?
The climatic zones. Remember in the pre-flood world, we talked about the flood, we talked about a vapor canopy above. And the vapor canopy compressed the atmosphere. It also created what we call a greenhouse effect, which means that even though the sun times were different on different parts of the Earth, the polars would have had 6 days of night and 6 days of sun, just like it does now, but the climate would have been temperate throughout because the greenhouse effect of that vapor canopy, okay? It would have been a garden from pole to pole. There are no polar ice caps. The weather report everywhere on the Earth is the same every day. 70-degree temperature, 50% relative humidity. And of course, what would happen with the greenhouse effect, since the pressure was greatly increased, then the environment would be no clouds, no weather. But the temperature changes overnight, let's say going from warm in the daytime of, let's say, 80 degrees down to 60 degrees at night. The condensation overnight, because of the increased pressure, would make a huge amount of heavy dew in the morning. So the ground is actually watered by just the cycle of the temperature change day and night. Okay? What happens after the flood is, of course, the vapor canopy collapses, the fountains of the Great Deep open up, and we wind up, after the flood, with warm oceans, because a lot of that water was subterranean down near the magma, and cold continents, because now the continents, there's no greenhouse effect to trap the heat. So when the heat is gone, you know what happens in the desert at night? The temperature in the desert during the daytime is 95 degrees. The temperature in the desert at night gets to be 25 or 30, not 25, but 35 to 40, because when the sun is gone, the cooling takes place immediately. Well, that's what happened after the flood. And what happened now is, because the oceans are warm, they're giving up huge amounts of moisture. That moisture is moving over the continents and falling as snow, and we get into an ice age. A time when, in fact, the ocean water comes up onto the continents, and there's a huge ice age after the flood. And as the ice age subsides, the planet comes back into balance with polar ice caps, top and bottom, and the temperate zones based upon the angle of the sun hitting the Earth without a greenhouse effect to moderate the climate. So the climate is exposed. And, of course, what happens now, too, is we begin to get the weather phenomena we see today. And the weather phenomena we see today, of course, is very dramatic. I mean, if you've ever seen the results of a tornado or been in a hurricane, you know what that's like. I've been in 3 hurricanes in my life, and I thank you, not again. I was at, I'll share a little story. I was at, there's a beach on Long Island called Jones Beach, and I worked there as a teenager in about, let's say, I was 18, 19, and 23 years. And the 3rd year we worked at the beach, there was a hurricane coming up from Florida, and Long Island, if you remember, sticks across from New York City. It sticks horizontally out across into the ocean, and the hurricane, it actually crossed. I actually went through the eye of that particular storm. But this was about 36 hours before the storm would get to us. But the storm was down off the, would have been southern New Jersey coast where the eye was at that point. And, but it was pushing the storm surge ahead of it, which is typically what they do. And we were down at the beach, and we were basically getting all the trash baskets and bringing them up above the boardwalk, because if they got caught in the storm, they'd go out to sea, and then someday they'd come back and possibly injure a swimmer. So we had to pull all the baskets. So we were pulling the baskets up. And as we drove down the beach pulling up the baskets, the storm surge began to increase. And every time that wave hit the soil, you could see the sand rise in a ripple all the way up to the boardwalk. You could actually stand and be lifted up about 2 or 3 inches. There's incredible power of the ocean. So the weather phenomena we have today is awesome power, but it's awesome power released because of the fact that moderating climate's gone.